Alien girl hid in my shuttle cargo. When I found her, she begged me not to tell. The hum of the shuttle filled the silence like a steady heartbeat. Jack leaned back in the pilot's chair, his body sore from hours of flying. At 48, he carried the weight of too many years and too many miles. His hands were calloused and scarred, the kind of hands that knew engines better than people. His broad shoulders slumped under the weight of fatigue, and the lines on his face told a story of restless nights, low pay, and dreams that had burned out long ago. It was supposed to be a simple run. Pick up the crates from a dusty outpost on the edge of nowhere, haul them across a few sectors, and drop them off without questions. That was how Jack liked it. Quiet jobs, no trouble, no attachments. But trouble had a way of finding him. A sound echoed from the cargo hold. At first it was faint, like metal shifting. He frowned and tapped the controls to level the shuttle. Again the sound came, a dull thump, then a scraping noise, then silence. Jack cursed under his breath. Probably a loose latch. Or vermin. He had dealt with both before. Neither was pleasant. He grabbed a pry bar from under the console and moved down the narrow passage toward the hold. The lights flickered overhead, throwing broken shadows across the walls. The air smelled of old oil and stale rations. Jack's boots echoed as he stepped onto the grated floor. The cargo was stacked in neat rows, sealed crates marked with faded stencils. He scanned them, eyes narrowing when one of the boxes trembled. Just slightly, but enough. He crouched in front of it, pressed his ear against the cold metal. For a moment there was nothing. Then a soft gasp, too quick to be machinery, too alive to be anything but breathing. Jack's stomach tightened. He jammed the bar under the lid and forced it open with a grunt. The crate creaked, the metal bending, until the lid popped free. And there she was, a girl, no older than 15, crouched inside like a frightened animal. Her skin shimmered silver, catching the dim light and reflecting it with a glow that was not quite human. Long brown hair tumbled around her face, tangled but soft. Her dress had once been fine, decorated with threads that glimmered faintly like starlight, but now it was frayed and torn, as though she had been running for far too long. Her storm-gray eyes locked on his, wide with fear. She raised her trembling hands, her voice breaking into a whisper that seemed to echo in the silence of the hold. "Please, do not tell them I am here." Jack froze, the bar still in his grip. For a long moment, neither moved. The girl's chest rose and fell in shallow breaths, her gaze desperate, pleading. She was no smuggled animal. She was no cargo. "What in the void?" His voice came out rough. "Who put you in here?" She swallowed hard. "My name is Elara. I had no choice. They would have sold me. Please, I beg you." Jack studied her, torn between anger and unease. She was young, far too young to be out here alone. Her features were alien, subtle but undeniable. The silver sheen of her skin shifted faintly, as though alive, as though something flowed beneath the surface. "You should not be here," Jack said. "Do you know what they will do if I am caught with you on board?" Her lips trembled, but she did not look away. "If they find me, I am dead anyway." Jack rubbed a hand over his stubbled jaw. He had heard stories before, whispers of species wiped out, hunted for what made them different. But he had never seen one. He never thought he would. "You are running," he said flatly. "Yes." Her voice was soft, but steady. "And you are my only chance." Jack leaned back, exhaling. He should have sealed the crate and turned her in at the next checkpoint. That was the smart thing. That was the safe thing. But when he looked into those gray eyes, he saw something he had not seen in a long time. Not just fear. Hope. "Damn it!" he muttered, more to himself than to her. "This is not my fight." Elara gripped the edge of the crate, her silver-toned fingers catching the light. "It does not have to be your fight. Only do not betray me." The words cut deeper than he expected. He remembered promises he had broken, people he had lost, lives he had failed to protect. He closed his eyes for a moment, then sighed. "Fine, you can stay hidden, but you will explain everything. If I am risking my life, I want to know why." Elara nodded, her expression softening with relief. Jack stood, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. This cargo run was no longer simple. He had just stepped into someone else's war. And deep down, he knew there was no turning back. Jack guided her out of the crate carefully, as though she might shatter under his touch. Elara moved stiffly, her legs trembling after being cramped for so long. She stood no taller than his shoulder, thin and delicate. Yet there was something unshakable in the way she held herself. She sat on a low crate as Jack leaned against the wall, arms folded across his broad chest. His eyes narrowed, watching her closely. "Talk. Who are you really? And why in all the stars would they hide you in my cargo?" Elara hesitated, her hands gripping the tattered fabric of her dress. For a long moment, Jack thought she would stay silent. Then her storm-gray eyes lifted to meet his, and she spoke in a voice that trembled but did not falter. "My people are gone. They were called the Illyrians. Once we lived among the stars, known for our gifts. We could sense what others could not, the energy between worlds, the echoes of things long forgotten. But it made us valuable. Too valuable." She paused, her silver-toned skin glimmering faintly as the dim light shifted. "Others wanted us for what ran through our veins. They hunted us. They tore down our worlds. One by one, we fell. And now, I am the last." Jack felt a weight settle in his chest. He had heard of extinction before, but hearing it from her lips, seeing the desperation in her eyes, made it real in a way that no rumor ever could. "You are telling me," Jack said slowly, "that you are the last of your entire species?" Elara nodded. "Yes, and the men who loaded your shuttle knew it. They are hunters, not merchants. They discovered who I was, and they planned to sell me to the highest bidder. To them, I am nothing but currency." Jack cursed under his breath. He had suspected those merchants were dirty, but this was worse than he imagined. Smuggling stolen goods was one thing. Selling a living girl was something else entirely. Elara's voice softened. "I could not let them, so I hid. I hoped, perhaps, that the one who found me would show mercy." Jack ran a hand across his face. He was no hero. He had never been one. But hearing her story twisted something inside him. He wanted to believe he could walk away, but he knew he would not. "You said your people could sense things," he muttered. "What does that mean exactly?" Elara reached into the folds of her torn dress and pulled out something small and fragile. It was a shard of crystalline data, no larger than a coin, glowing faintly with blue light. She held it in her palm like it was more precious than her own life. "This is all I have left," she whispered. "It contains a fragment of a map. My people had sanctuaries, hidden places where we stored our knowledge, our history, our essence. This shard points to one of them. If I can reach it, perhaps something of the Illyrians can survive." Jack stared at the shard, the soft light casting faint shadows across his scarred face. A map to a forgotten sanctuary, a piece of an extinct people's legacy. And it was hidden in the hands of a girl hunted across the stars. "You realize," he said gruffly, "that carrying that thing makes you even more of a target." Elara's lips curved in the faintest smile, though her eyes still carried sadness. "I have been a target since the day my world burned. This shard only gives me a chance to make it mean something." Jack pushed himself off the wall, pacing the narrow aisle. Every instinct screamed at him to turn her in, to cut himself free from this nightmare. But every time he looked at her, he remembered her words. "Do not betray me." "I should report you," he said, his voice low. "Yes," Elara replied, her tone calm. "You should." Jack stopped, surprised by her answer. She met his gaze steadily. "But if you do, my people die with me. Their light fades forever. If you protect me, even if only for a little while, then perhaps I can finish what they could not." Jack stood there in silence, his chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. He thought of all the years he had drifted through the stars, a man without purpose, hauling crates for a living. And now here was this girl, carrying the weight of an entire civilization on her small shoulders, asking him for nothing more than silence. Something in him shifted. "Fine," he muttered at last. But if I am doing this, you listen to me. You follow my rules. And if you sense danger, you warn me. Understood. Relief flickered in her eyes as she nodded quickly. Yes, I promise. Jack turned away, running a hand across the old shuttle's bulkhead. For years, this ship had carried nothing but dust and broken machines. Now, for the first time, it carried something worth more than all the cargo he had ever flown. And with that realization came a truth he could not ignore. This run was no longer about crates and credits. It was about survival. Hers and now his too. The stars stretched endlessly beyond the shuttle's viewport, a sea of cold fire in the dark. Jack had flown this route dozens of times before, slipping between trade hubs and forgotten ports, but never had the void felt so heavy. It was not just space anymore. It was pursuit. He sat at the controls, his eyes scanning the blinking readouts. Elara sat quietly in the co-pilot's seat, her silver-toned skin glowing faintly in the dim light. She kept her gaze fixed on the stars, as if she could hear something beyond what his instruments showed. Jack broke the silence. We will need to pass 2 checkpoints before we reach the refueling station. If they scan us too closely, we are finished. Elara nodded slowly. I can help. He raised an eyebrow. Help? How? She closed her eyes, her hands resting lightly against the console. A soft hum filled the air, so faint Jack thought he imagined it. The lights on the dashboard flickered, then steadied. There are currents in space, she whispered. Not winds, not gravity, something deeper. My people could feel them. The hunters do not know how to hide their trail, but I can sense them. Jack stared at her. You mean you can track them? Yes, she said, opening her storm-gray eyes. And avoid them, if you trust me. Trust, that word again. Jack clenched his jaw, then turned back to the controls. Fine, but if you are wrong, we are both dead. She gave a small, tired smile. If I am wrong, I am already dead. The shuttle drifted closer to the first checkpoint, a border station orbiting a barren moon. Jack's pulse quickened as a patrol ship hailed them, demanding identification and cargo verification. He transmitted the standard codes, his voice steady despite the weight in his chest. Freighter Alpha 7, came the reply. Proceed to docking lane 3 for inspection. Jack swore under his breath. Docking meant scans, and scans meant Elara would be discovered. But before he could respond, Elara leaned forward, her hand hovering over the comms panel. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Wait! The hum returned, faint but insistent. Jack glanced at his scanners and saw a small fluctuation ripple across the patrol ship's signal. Static filled the line. Then suddenly the voice returned. Freighter Alpha 7, you are clear to pass. Maintain course and speed. Jack blinked. What did you just do? Elara lowered her hand, her chest rising with a shaky breath. I nudged them, just enough that they saw what they expected to see. Jack stared at her, a shiver crawling down his spine. Whatever she was more dangerous and more valuable than he had realized. Hours stretched into days as they flew deeper into unregulated space. The hunters were close behind. Jack could feel it. Every transmission crackled with hidden threats. Every shadow in the void felt like an ambush waiting to happen. Yet Elara proved resourceful. She sensed patrols before the scanners picked them up. She guided Jack through abandoned routes, forgotten debris fields, and the skeletal remains of ships long dead. More than once, her instincts saved them from certain capture. At first, Jack told himself she was only cargo, a problem he had been forced to carry. But as time passed, he began to see her differently. She was no helpless child. She was fragile, yes, but also fierce in a way that reminded him of soldiers he had once known. Every time she steadied her voice to guide them, every time she pressed forward despite the fear in her eyes, Jack felt the armor around his heart crack a little more. One night, as the shuttle drifted through a derelict station where he planned to scavenge fuel, Elara broke the silence. Why did you not turn me in? She asked softly. Jack kept his eyes on the controls. I should have. But you did not. He exhaled slowly. Because when I looked at you, I saw someone who deserves a chance. And I realized, I am tired of letting good things die. Elara's lips parted, her storm-gray eyes shimmering in the faint glow of the consoles. For a moment she looked as though she might speak, but instead she turned back to the stars. The silence that followed was not heavy. It was something else, something almost like trust. The derelict station creaked like the bones of some ancient beast, its corridors silent except for the distant hiss of escaping air. Jack had docked the shuttle in one of its shadowed bays, hoping to scavenge fuel cells and supplies before moving on. The place was abandoned, stripped long ago by scavengers, but sometimes scraps remained if you knew where to look. Jack moved cautiously through the corridors, his boots echoing against the hollow floor. Elara followed close behind, her gray eyes scanning the darkness with an unease that mirrored his own. "Stay close," Jack muttered. "These places attract the wrong kind of people." "I can feel them," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Not here yet, but near." Jack frowned. He trusted her senses more than his scanners now. That unsettled him more than he cared to admit. They found a storage bay half collapsed under rubble, but inside were a few intact containers. Jack pried one open, revealing fuel cells still sealed and functional. Relief flickered across his weathered face. "We might just make it." But when they returned to the docking bay, Jack stopped cold. Someone had been there. The shuttle's ramp was lowered. Shadows shifted inside. He raised his blaster, motioning for Elara to stay back. But before he could step forward, a familiar voice echoed from the hold. Well, Jack Mercer. Still alive, and still dragging your bones across the galaxy." Jack's jaw tightened. He knew that voice. Rin Cole. Once a smuggler like him, now a parasite who sold information to whoever paid best. Jack stepped onto the ramp, blaster ready. "Rin, this is my ship. You have 3 seconds to leave." A figure emerged from the shadows, tall, lean, with a crooked grin that never reached his eyes. Rin held up his hands in mock surrender. "Easy, old friend. I only came to talk." "You were never my friend," Jack growled. "What do you want?" Rin's gaze slid past him to where Elara stood, her silver-toned skin catching the light. His grin widened. "Ah, that explains it. Word is, the hunters are offering a fortune for a little runaway." I did not believe it until now. Jack's stomach turned to ice. He had been a fool. Bringing the shuttle here, trusting the station, trusting Rin. He should have known betrayal would come. It always did. "You will not touch her," Jack said, his voice low and dangerous. Rin laughed. "Jack, you cannot protect her. You can barely keep that rust bucket flying. Sell her, and you can buy yourself a new life. Credits enough to drink yourself to the grave." Jack's grip tightened on his blaster. "Not this time." The grin slipped from Rin's face, replaced by cold steel. Figures emerged from the shadows. Mercenaries in patched armor, weapons drawn. They had been waiting. It was an ambush. Blaster fire erupted, searing the air with bolts of light. Jack fired back, ducking behind a crate, his heart pounding. Elara crouched behind him, her hands pressed against the deck as though steadying herself against a storm. One of the mercenaries charged forward. Jack shot him down, the recoil jarring his arm. Another blast grazed the wall inches from his head. They were outnumbered, trapped in his own ship. "Jack!" Elara cried, her voice sharp. "Do not give up." He turned to her, sweat and soot streaking his face. "You need to hide." "No!" she shouted, her gray eyes blazing. "If you fall, I fall. But if you fight, maybe we both live." For a heartbeat, Jack froze. The fire in her eyes reminded him of soldiers he had once fought beside. Men and women who refused to bow even when the universe demanded it. Something inside him reignited, a flame he thought long dead. He stood, firing with deadly precision. Every shot fueled by a will he had not felt in years. The mercenaries faltered, surprised by his ferocity. Elara's presence seemed to steady him, her strange hum filling the air again. The lights flickered, the mercenaries' targeting systems sputtering as if reality itself bent around her will. Rin cursed, ducking behind cover. "This is not over, Jack. The hunters are coming, and they will tear you apart. But Jack did not flinch. He drove them back, shot by shot, until the mercenaries retreated into the shadows, dragging their wounded with them. The docking bay fell silent, the acrid smell of burned metal hanging in the air. Jack lowered his blaster, his chest heaving. Elara stepped forward, placing a trembling hand on his arm. "You fought for me," she whispered. Jack looked at her, his voice rough. "No, I fought with you." The shuttle limped through the void, its engines groaning from the ambush. Warning lights pulsed red across the console, but somehow the old ship still held together. Jack's hands worked steadily over the controls, his jaw tight with focus. Every shudder, every flicker of failing power was another reminder of how close they had come to being finished. Elara sat beside him, the small shard of crystalline data clasped tightly in her hands. Her eyes were fixed on it as though it were the only light in the darkness. "Are you certain this thing will lead us anywhere?" Jack asked, his voice heavy with doubt. "Yes," she whispered. "It will take us to the sanctuary. My people built it to last even when everything else was destroyed. It is the only place left where I might be safe." Jack glanced at her, his weathered face hard but not unkind. "Safe is a word I stopped believing in a long time." Elara turned her storm-gray eyes on him. "Then believe for me." The words lingered in the air, soft but unshakable. Jack said nothing more, but his grip on the controls tightened. They followed the shard's faint signal to the edge of a dead system. The star here had burned out long ago, leaving only a dim ember casting shadows across barren worlds. The sanctuary's coordinates led them to one such planet, its surface cracked and lifeless, the ruins of old cities buried beneath ash and stone. The shuttle descended through the thin atmosphere, rattling as it pierced the clouds of dust. Jack set it down on a jagged plateau, the engines coughing their last as he powered them down. Beyond the viewport stretched a wasteland of rock and silence. "This is it," Elara said quietly. "The last home of my people." Jack grabbed his blaster, slinging a pack over his shoulder. "Then let us see if it was worth the trip." They stepped into the barren air, their boots crunching against the dust. The wind howled through the ruins like the voices of ghosts. Elara led the way, the shard glowing faintly in her palm, pulling her forward as if it remembered the path. They entered what remained of a vast hall, its walls carved with symbols Jack could not read. The ceiling had collapsed in places, but in the center stood a towering arch of black stone, untouched by time. Elara approached it, her hand trembling as she pressed the shard into a hollow groove. For a moment nothing happened. Then the ground trembled. Light flared across the arch, racing through ancient carvings, filling the ruins with a glow that pierced the darkness. Jack took a step back, his eyes widening as the air shimmered. A deep hum filled the hall, the same hum he had felt whenever Elara reached beyond herself. But this was greater, stronger, alive. The sanctuary awoke. Panels slid open in the floor, revealing crystalline conduits pulsing with energy. Towers of light rose from hidden chambers, forming patterns in the air, images of Illyrian cities, faces, histories long lost. It was as though the world itself had remembered who it once was. Elara's eyes filled with tears. She pressed her hands against the arch, her voice breaking. "They are here. They are not gone. Their memory still lives." But the moment was shattered by the roar of engines above. Jack spun, cursing as mercenary ships descended through the clouds, their weapons glowing. They had been followed. The hunters had arrived. Blaster fire rained down as armored figures poured into the ruins. Jack dragged Elara behind a fallen column, firing back with grim determination. "Of course they would not let us have this," he growled. Elara gripped his arm. "The sanctuary can help us. I only need time." Jack nodded, his weathered face set with iron resolve. "Then I will buy it." He rose from cover, blaster in hand, firing with precision that came from decades of survival. The mercenaries closed in, shouting orders, their numbers overwhelming. Jack's blaster grew hot in his grip, the air filled with smoke and the hiss of energy bolts. Elara stood behind the arch, her voice rising in a strange, melodic chant. The sanctuary responded. Crystalline structures unfolded from the ground, forming barriers that absorbed the mercenaries' fire. Energy pulsed from the arch itself, spreading through the ruins like veins of living light. One mercenary broke through the defenses, charging toward her with a blade. Jack lunged, tackling him to the ground, wrestling the weapon away before driving his fist into the man's helmet until he fell still. Jack staggered back to his feet, blood on his knuckles, his chest heaving. The sanctuary roared to life. Beams of light erupted from the floor, striking the mercenary ships above. One exploded in a fiery burst. Another spun out of control and crashed against the barren cliffs. Panic rippled through the attackers as the ruins themselves fought back. Elara's voice carried above the chaos, steady and strong. "This is our home. You cannot take it from us." The remaining mercenaries faltered, their weapons useless against the living fortress that had awakened around them. Some fled, scrambling back to their ships. Others were consumed in the storm of light. At last silence fell. The sanctuary glowed with quiet strength, its defenses settling into a steady hum. Jack lowered his blaster, his arms heavy, his body aching. Elara turned to him, her eyes shining with tears and light. "We made it." Jack stared at her, exhaustion etched into every line of his face. "You made it. I only kept the wolves from the door." She shook her head, stepping closer. "No. Without you, I would never have reached this place. Without you, I would still be running. You gave me a chance to stand." Jack looked at her, the fire of the sanctuary reflected in his weary eyes. For years he had been nothing more than a drifter, carrying crates, waiting for the end. But standing there, beside this girl who carried the legacy of an entire people, he realized something had changed. He was not drifting anymore. He had something to protect. The sanctuary hummed around them, its ancient systems glowing like veins of fire beneath the stone. The ruins no longer felt like a tomb. They felt alive, awake, as though the planet itself had been waiting for someone to return. Jack sat heavily on a broken pillar, his blaster resting across his knees. The years weighed on him now more than ever, his body aching from every fight, every narrow escape. But when he looked at Elara, standing at the heart of the sanctuary, he felt something he had not felt in years. Hope. Elara touched the crystalline arch, her storm-gray eyes shimmering with light reflected from the ancient machines. "They left this for us," she whispered. "A seed, waiting to grow again. My people are gone, but their legacy, it can begin anew." Jack managed a tired smile. "Looks like you've got a whole fortress backing you up now. Not a bad place to start over." She turned, walking toward him, her long brown hair catching the pale glow. Her silver-toned skin seemed to shine in the sanctuary's light, making her look almost ethereal. "Not me," she said softly. "Us. I could not have reached this place without you." Jack let out a low laugh. "I'm just a shuttle rat who stumbled into the wrong crate." Elara shook her head firmly. "No. You're the man who kept me alive when everyone else wanted me dead. You're the man who fought when you had no reason to. You're not just a pilot, Jack. You're my guardian." For a long moment the words hung in the air. Jack stared at her, his lined face unreadable. Then he looked down at his calloused hands, scarred and worn, and a small, almost reluctant smile touched his lips. "Guardian, huh? Guess I could live with that." Before he could say more, a deep rumble echoed through the ruins. The sanctuary systems shifted, new chambers unlocking, their doors sliding open to reveal glowing halls stretching into the distance. Holograms flickered to life, Illyrian figures bowing, cities rising, a history long forgotten. Elara's breath caught in her throat. They preserved it all. Every memory, every voice. It's still here. Jack rose to his feet, slinging his blaster back over his shoulder. "Then it looks like we've got work to do. If those mercs tracked us here, others will too. This place won't stay a secret forever." Elara nodded, her expression fierce despite the tears shining in her eyes. "Then we protect it. Together." They walked deeper into the sanctuary, the glow of alien lights guiding their path. The air was thick with the echoes of a civilization reborn, and though danger still loomed beyond the stars, Jack no longer felt like a man running from his past. He had something to fight for, someone to fight for, and as the great sanctuary pulsed with life around them, Jack understood the truth at last. She hadn't just hidden in his cargo bay, she had hidden in his life, and he would never let her be taken again.